Okay, guys, we got the Splinterlands 1.5 book out. There is some disappointments in it and some very cool news for a lot of things. And it did move up the floor of the Runi price. That's a special little thing. But let's go ahead and jump into this Git book for the Secret of Praetoria. Now, I'm sorry, it's white. Can't do anything about that. Let's see if I can't zoom it in. So hopefully that's a little bit better on the video for you, but it is, I don't like white backgrounds when I'm recording, but you know, the Git book doesn't have, that I know of, a way to make this dark, but let's go ahead and get into it. The Secret of Praetoria, we're going to skip over the lore. If you want to read through the lore, just go ahead and do it. Land deeds, this is very, very, simple stuff that we all know from before. Basically just reminding you, that you can have a plot, a tract, a region, a territory, and kind of how they will be broken down and explained as to where there are and things like that. This is going over the claiming process and how this is all old news. We all know how claiming works, I think, and how you end up in the next available region and things like that. There was a part here on surveying. Now, the one thing that we learn here about surveying is the actual names for each one of the types of lands. So you got badlands and bogs, calderas and canyons, deserts and forests, hills and jungles, lakes and mountains, plains and rivers, swamps and tundra. And then there's some images here that are little cutouts from each of the different kinds of land. So that's pretty cool to see. Now, rarity they talk about here is that each plot will be one of the 4 rarities. With the exception of plots containing a castle or keep, and more details are on that later on in the book, as it says, and we'll go over that. They also talk about they will have one of 3 different resource types, either natural, magical, or occupied. And basically what that means is they'll be able to get either the normal material or the magic material that land produces, or with occupied lands, you'll be able to, fight those monsters to earn essences. But all of that kind of stuff is going to be in land 2.0, not 1.5. So we're not getting those more advanced resources and those big resource markets. Instead, we're going to be getting a more simpler one, and we'll talk about that as we move farther along into this. There's a little talk here about castles and keeps, with letting you know that every track gets one keep and every region gets 1 castle, which means one of the tracks in each region does have a castle in it. They also explain that castles and keeps, there's some lore behind them, and they are where they are because they're supposed to be. There are buildings that are always there because they're built up with magic, and they have an ability to talk to each other, which is, I think, how we're going to be able to trade within the different regions without any problems. They talk through the starter packages that they pass, so the building in a box, the time vault crystals, and the unstable totems. That's kind of old news. That's why I'm skipping through this kind of quickly. And then we get to the first 1.5 initial specifications. So this is where they kind of talk about what's going to be coming out and what isn't coming out, and that there are some, interesting things that are coming. So it says the Splinterlands team is extremely excited to present the initial plan for 1.5. They're adding this release between 1 and 2, mostly because it's going to add some more utility for our cards. It's going to let them play test some of the different systems that they're doing, and they're hoping to include everything in this document in 1.5 before the second quarter of this year. So that means that we could be looking at this, June, July of this year, this part of this game going live. So there is a hope that this, does come out pretty soon and we can start playing around with it, but it's not going to be anything near what land is going to be when they're all done with it. Just keep that in mind. So when it comes to staking cards, they're going to talk about here that in 1.5, there's going to be a maximum of 5 cards that'll be able to stack to each land pot and workers. This means the infinite card staking is not going live in 1.5 from what I can tell. That'll be coming out later on in version 2.0, and that's probably because the special land plots where you'll be able to stake infinite cards to try to earn things are probably going to be something that they're not including within this game, this part of the game. There is some interesting things you'll find out as we go further into the book, but the main thing you should know about the staking of the cards is that they are locked up on the land for 3 days once you unstake them, and if you unstake them they immediately stop working but don't unlock for 3 days. So this is a very interesting mechanic that they put into it, and it helps, and every card is going to have a production point built into them that we'll get into in a little bit. But the idea is that you stake your card to the land, but you can't play with it anymore. It'll be stuck on the land. And if you want to take it off the land, it's going to be 3 days before you'll get it back and put it onto another land, or play with it or rent it out or anything. And then you can go ahead and stake a different card that isn't on a cooldown immediately after you unstake this card. So it's easy for you to replace a card with another card, but that other card kind of ends up in a little bit of a limbo. And this is probably just to keep people from bouncing these cards around too much and doing any gaming of the system and things like that. So it's a good, to me, that's a good setup. I don't really know why they show the Junker here other than he looks like he's going to be working the land, but he doesn't get any kind of special bonus for working the land. Something they added that we didn't know about is the power sources. And so power sources is something that they've added in, that you'll have to purchase for each land plot in 1.5 for 5,000 DEC or 5,000 DECB. But there are some exceptions to this. So the basic idea behind this is that, normally battle mages channel our magic to summon the different monsters, which is kind of an interesting lore loophole here, because battle mages summon a summoner and the summoner summons the monsters, but in my opinion, but thus you need a power stone, which is to manifest the workers to work the land, and so that the power stone kind of replaces the battle mage. But the power stones will be needed on each plot where workers are going to be assigned, which means if you have a plot of land that you haven't assigned anything to, you don't need it to have this power source. So you can go ahead and pay the 5,000 DEC or 5,000 DECB later, and these tokens are burned. That's why you can use DECB for this. But they did say that a power stone will be included in the perk for a building in a box. I had already planned to do a building in a box for all 200 of my lands on my 2 tracks. Now I'm absolutely doing a building in a box, because half of that DEC is just going to cover it coming with one of these power sources. The other thing is that if a Runi is put onto a land, it acts as a power source. This is one of those extra little utilities they gave for Runi, and they did explain that if a plot has both a Runi and a power source, then it will combine for a 6 card to work on a plot. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and get the building in the box for all 200. I own 5 Runis. I can stake them to my 5 rarest lands, and it'll allow me to get 6 workers on those lands, and so those lands will be producing a lot of whatever it is I tell them to produce. So that's pretty exciting for anybody who holds a Runi, and why the Runi price floor went up after this paper came out, because being able to stake an additional card could be huge. I mean, huge. I mean, if you're a whale and you're staking alpha gold legendary cards on this land, and you get to put 6 instead of 5, that land is going to be cooking, and just cooking. Then they talk about the staking of DEC. This is something I think a lot of people missed and didn't understand. Yes, it does cost 10,000 DEC for a max level card, but this scales with the amount of BCX for the card. The example they give is a 200 BCX Chaos Legion common card is going to only cost 5k DEC to stake. So it's not 10,000 DEC to stake no matter what. It is basically a certain amount of DEC per BECX based on the amount of BCX that it would be for a legendary card. For the card at max level. They give you another example here to help better understand that. So on a BCX gold foil legendary card, where you only need 4 copies for a max level card, if you have a 3 BCX card, it's going to still cost 7,500 DEC to have it staked. Now that means that the staked DEC is always proportionate to how many cards you have compared to how many cards a max level has of that same card, and then so you do your amount of cards, compared to how many you needed for max level, and then you do the math against the 10,000 to figure out how much DEC you need in the staking pool. One of the other things that they said is that it doesn't matter like what cards you're staking. It's all going to have to do with the BCX of them, and their production bonuses are going to be on for more rare cards are going to be, you know, worked out when you see how much they get to mine. This really it has a lot of different examples here for you, letting you know how much DEC you need to be in, and it does explain a little key thing for harvesting. And even though we haven't got into the resource points and what you're going to be harvesting, the way they're going to do this is opposed to staking DEC to each individual land, because that could be cumbersome for us and just kind of annoying. You're going to be staking DEC into the region that you're in, and then your amount of DEC will be shown on a list, and kind of like everyone will see how much you're putting into your region, and then you will be able to harvest. And when you harvest, it'll look at how much DEC you need to have based on the workers you have working the land, and then it'll give you your reward as long as you have all that much DEC staked. If you're under that DEC stake though, it still does let you harvest, and instead of giving you the maximum reward, it'll give you a percentage reward based on how much you have staked. So the example they give here is like you need 500k to stake 10 lands with 5 max level monsters on it, but you only put 400k DEC staking into the region. Well, then when you do your claim, they're going to go, well, you needed 500k, but you had 400k, so you got 80% of what you need staked here, so we will give you 80% of the rewards that you were supposed to get. This means that if you have monsters that you've set aside for land, you can put them all onto the land and stake them all into the cards, building everything out the way that you want it, and then over time continually stake more DEC until you get to the DEC level that you're earning your maximum rewards. But you could still be earning half rewards, quarter rewards, 60-70% of your rewards, and maybe that'd be okay with you. Now, maybe you don't want cards staked to land who aren't earning anything, especially if you could be renting them out to earn DEC, but it's a good thing to note that they built it this way, so that if for some reason you forgot you staked an extra card to a land and didn't stake the DEC, your harvest is still going to go through without any problems. It's just going to give you a little bit less than you would have gotten. Another thing to note here that is kind of interesting, since we're talking about harvesting, whenever you are moving cards on or off land, it's going to cause a harvest, and that's because they always want to know how much DEC you are supposed to have in order to do a harvest. Hopefully they suspend this day one, because like it would be really weird that like I'm staking my 1,000 monster cards that I have to stake to land, and every time I do one land I do a harvest when I'm going to be harvesting nothing because I just barely put them on. But you know, we'll have to see what they decide to do as we first roll this out. But that's a little bit, you know, going over the whole monster staking, the DEC staking for monsters. So now we'll get into the production points. So the production points are very, very interesting. You're going to see here on the production point part, which you might want to, you know, copy this out, bookmark it, do something to help your planning. But you're going to see here what you can do, what the amount of points, the production points a card will get at max level, and then it will have the same amount of production points as it does for like the DEC that you're going to be doing. Where if I had a half BCX common here, so a 200 one, it would do half, 500 production points. And if you had a very low level common, it would do, you know, whatever over your percentage over 400 cards, because that's a max level, times 1,000, and that's how much production you would get from that card. Now you can see that on a common card you only get 1,000, or one for a regular 1 BCX card you would get 2.5. And then it shows right here that for a gold max you'd get 2,000, and that breaks down to 52 for a 1 BCX. Now, as you can see, a legendary card here, just a single legendary card, pulls down 136. So that's kind of an interesting thing for a 1 BCX. And then a max level legendary gets 1,500, whereas a gold max level legendary gets 10,000. So it's 2,000, 4,000, 6,000, and 10,000. On the golds, that's really nice, Some people think that this one, it scales up kind of weird, but it's because it all has to be under 2,000, because it's 1,000, then 100, 1,100, but then it only scales up to 1,250 and then to 1,500 for max legendary cards. So a max legendary card is only, 1.5 times better than a max common, but it's even less than that than a max rare. And like a max rare is just barely better than a max epic is just barely better than a rare. So these are interesting numbers for sure. Definitely, I feel like the regular rare cards and regular legendary cards got shafted a tiny bit here, because these production points all had to do be under this 2,000 that they started the max level gold. And obviously gold gets a lot more and it scales a lot better at 2,000, 4,000, 6,000. Like a comparison, a max level gold legendary card is 5 times better than a max common card that's gold. Whereas a max legendary regular is only 1.5. So 1.5 to 5 times. That is definitely showing, if you were somebody who collected gold cards, and shout out to Gold Matters, you are going to have some lands that can produce at very high. Now, something to notice, they did say older cards are going to do better, so immediately here they have a set bonus that is a base PPP multiplier. So basically an alpha core card or promo card is going to get a 10x bonus. So if you have an alpha card, an alpha max level common card, it's going to do 10,000 points. 1,000 times 10,000. That means that your max level common cards are going to be the same thing as a max golden, Wraith. So you have a max level gold Wraith. He gets 10,000 for being legendary. He gets no bonus because he's Chaos Legion, who doesn't get a bonus. He gets 10,000 points. And you have the silliest little common at max level in alpha, and it gets that same 10,000 points. So they did give that love to alpha. Beta also got a 5x bonus, so similar things. Any good high beta card is going to get, you're going to take this number and times it by 5. Same thing on the golden version. And even the untamed cards are getting a 2x bonus, which is pretty good. It makes them, have that extra utility of being moved to land, maybe as soon as Rebellion comes out, and they'll be pulling down that bonus. We'll have to see if in the future these bonuses change at all or get bigger, because 3 years from now, when Chaos Legion is moving out of modern and into wild, does Chaos Legion then maybe go into the untamed bucket with the 2x? But then does that devalue untamed cards a whole bunch? So maybe they only get like a 1.5, or are these going to be the only sets that get bonuses to their multiplier? I don't know. Now let's go ahead and get into the terrain preferences. This is something that we all are going to have to pay attention to when we're staking our land, but we're just going to go over briefly here. Basically, each type of land is going to have a certain monster that enjoys working on that land and can get a full 10% bonus. And then some teams are also going to have another plot where they could go and get a 5% bonus, while they are also going to have multiple plots where they have a 50% negative and sometimes a smaller negative like 10%. The whole point on this, though, is that you need to see is you can't just pigeonhole yourself to one splinter. You can't buy all death cards because they're cheap, or all any card because it's cheap. You need to have a plethora of cards across the different splinters. And I said splinters, I'm supposed to say elements, across the different elements, so that you can hopefully on every single land put a 10% bonus worker on that land. Now, the one caveat to this is neutral. Neutral monsters can go on any land, no bonus, no detriment. So you might want a collection of those, but over time, that actually means, and this is something that I think is kind of interesting, for the more common man, owning neutral cards is good. for the more connoisseur of a perfect setup, he's going to want to have 0 neutral cards staking on his land. On every type of land, he's going to want to find that a card, either a death card or a fire card for the mountains. For all of my plains, I'm going to want life or dragons. And as you can see, this is going to be something that maybe hurts the values a little bit of neutral cards in the long run. Just a little bit. Then again, would some people just prefer neutral cards so they could just ignore this because a 10% bonus isn't enough of a play? I don't know. We'll have to see. Now we're going to go into the part on production boost. So the following features that will provide additional boosts to your production points. And the first thing we're going to talk about is land rarity. So land rarity, this is one of the areas where I think they have a little bit of a miss. And I'm going to explain why I think this is a miss. And I don't know if we could get this changed at this point, but it's one of the things I'm thinking is very, very huge, big miss. And so I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to put a question in on the town hall and we'll see if they talk about it, but I don't know if they will. But basically, the land rarity, we are only at a 1% chance to get a legendary land. You're 4% to get a common, an epic, 20% to get a rare, and 75% of the lands claimed are going to be common. I actually think that these are low. That if there is never going to be more land printed and there is only this much land in the game, having this percentage is even worse, much worse than the Splinterlands packs, is interesting thing. It is going to make legendary land extremely rare. One of the other things that I didn't read in here is, do we have any kind of guarantees when you claim a tract? Like, when I claim a tract, am I guaranteed to get a legendary land? Because theoretically speaking, my odds to get a legendary land would be I'd have to get lucky to get one with a 1% chance. And here's why. One of my lands is a keep or a castle. So I'm really only going to be opening up 99 lands that have a chance to become legendary, because the keep, well, I guess maybe I don't know. Maybe the keep or the castle can be legendary too. Would that be the rarest thing in the game? I don't think so though. So then I only get a 99 out of 100 when I'm opening them, and so I might get no legendary lands. And is it going to be literally one every time you open up X amount of lands, and somebody's going to get really lucky and they're going to open a track and they're going to pull 6 legendary lands because they just roll that 1 6 times in 100 checks? I don't like that much RNG into the land. I would have liked each track to be a little bit more equal, and have the rarity kind of be on which land you get, not whether or not it's rare, epic, or legendary. And also, I think 1% is just really, really low. And let me explain basically why. So there are, if we pull up our little friendly, got to type the right thing. Our friendly calculator tool, right? There's only 150,000 lands in the game. And if you do that by 1%, that's only 1,500 legendary lands in the entire game. And the other thing that this is going to do is it's going to make it so that most of you that have 10 plots are going to get 10 common ones. I mean, you just are. You have 75% chance to get common. Maybe you'd argue that one of them should be, you'll pull 1 rare in there, but that's going to be disappointing. And it's not like 10 lands is a small investment. Sorry, yawn. So I don't like this, but the bonus productions are pretty cool. If you do get a legendary land, which at this point I have no way of knowing if you will, because there is no guarantees here provided. If you claim this many lands at once, you'll get a legendary or anything. But if you get one, it'll have 100% production boost. That is pretty big. That would mean that, those production numbers we saw on the other screen would all be doubled. So that would be pretty good. The next thing that can give you bonuses are if it's a magical resource land or an occupied land. So these ones are 12 and 3%. So to get like a legendary occupied land, you gotta roll a 1 and then roll a 2, 1, 2, or 3 on that check. Or maybe you have to roll a 99 followed by a 97, 98, and 99 on the next check to actually get it. But these are going to be 3% of your land, and this is going to be 12% of your land. The thing is, I don't like, these percentages are interesting if there's no guaranteed. Like if I flip a track, I think I should be guaranteed to get 5 magical resources, 2 occupied lands, and 2 legendary lands or something in my tract, because I bought 100 lands that are going together in an ecosystem that I would hope would be similar to the next tract next to me. Having random crazy RNG, if it's this way, good luck to all of us. Maybe I'll get a good tract, and you might get a bad one, or maybe I'll get the bad one and you're going to get the good one. That's going to be an interesting thing to have to deal with. But again, these ones get production boost, but these ones of 100%, but they only get it to if you go towards the production thing that they want you to produce on that land. So like if for some reason you decided to put a bunch of farmers and make grain on a magical resource plot, that would be bad. Oh, same thing on an occupied one. You need to mine SPS here, and you need to search for the secret of Praetoria, do the research into it here. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into what you can do on your land. But let's go ahead and talk about Runis. So Runis get a whole little section here because a Runi will provide a 100% POP boost to the production of an entire plot. So they're equivalent to having a legendary totem and can be combined with legendary totems or other totems. So this is something a Runi will do besides the Runi core replacing the power source, so you don't need one, or providing a 6th spot for you to stake a monster onto a land if you have a power source and a Runi core. Combined Runis are also going to be able to produce even more, but only up to a certain amount of Runis. I want to say, is it 5? Yeah, any more than 5 and you stop getting additional bonuses. So the number, so they have the math here. So it's the sum of the base POP of each combined Runi times the number of Runi. For the base POP for each Runi will be 1,500. Or 1,000 for a regular Runi. These are their this is their PIP points. But if I combine them together, then I get a bigger POP point. Also, we've all knows that you're going to be able to find totem fragments when you're out there researching the land. And if you have a Runi on a plot, it's going to give that plot a higher chance of finding totem fragments, and those are something that's pretty cool. The 1.5 is launching with utility for you to put titles on a land, and then basically staking the title to the land, and it's also going to add a boost. So we're getting these boosts to production from the different titles. I actually have a high roller, so that's kind of cool. That's a 50% boost. I think I also have a few of the Untamed. I have I don't have the Praetorian. That's the one for region holders. I have the Legionnaire. The 10% one for whole. I have a couple of those, so that's pretty cool. Overall, these are all pretty cool that you're finally going to have some value driven to these titles. And we did see some of the people who were selling titles kind of cheap. They all got scooped up once this paper came out. Totems. So the totems are going to be basically a 10% boost, 25% boost, 50 boost, 100% boost. These boost numbers are actually pretty good. I like that the epic is twice as good as the rare. That's a much better increase compared to that POP, the production point numbers. So that means that the epic totems are a lot better than a rare totem, whereas an epic monster is only a little bit better than a rare monster when it comes to working the land. Of course, when you're doing percentage boosts and multipliers, a little bit more in the base can go a long way in the final numbers. And then legendary totems do 100% bonus. This does mean that like a legendary land with a Runi on it and a legendary totem would be like kind of like at a base times 3x on their production. So you could see how you could definitely put a lot of money into one plot with some very, very rare items and really pump that number up. there's some calculation examples that kind of explain it here, and basically they do one for a rich man and one for a poor man. So somebody with a Runi, a Runi on an epic plot with a rare totem and the untamed title, which gives a 50% boost, is going to get, this 100 plus 40 plus 25 plus 50 is a 215% boost. And in this example, they're staking, a Runi 2500 beta legendary cards and a 3000 for their production points, because of here's what they're staking. So a regular foil Runi, 2 BCX legendary gold legendary cards from beta, and 3 max level Chaos Legion regular foil common cards at 1000 PPRP each. So all of these add up to 2900, and then you do the big multiplier here by the 215, you end up with a 6345. And so that's how much they're going to be producing of whatever thing they are producing. Plus, though, you add the base production to the boosted production to get a total number. So your total number ends up being 92,000. So that's pretty big, if you've got this setup. But then it has like kind of a cheaper setup. So if you have 5 max level Chaos Legion regular foil cards, so these are the rare ones for that 1100 PRP that a Chaos Legion card would give, then and that's all you have there, then your base rate is 5500. In this case, you only have the tiny little bonus for it being a common plot, the 10% boost, which is going to push the 5500 up to push this up, add like 550, and so you're going to be a 6,000 PP per hour. So you can see, even if you had a lot of plots doing this, one person with a lot of really rare stuff on the land would just blow you out of the water with how much they're going to produce. They have some, they talk through these examples and stuff, and they just point out that the amount of people who will be able to make a plot like this are pretty rare. And most people will probably be making plots that are similar to this. Food. So there is kind of an interesting resource, and this is where they talk about the only resource that will be farming in the game in the beginning is grain. Now, your monsters are going to need to be fed, and you're going to have to farm food to feed them within the game or buy food from the game. Now, they're going to be selling food at 1 DEC per grain, but they do expect the secondary market on grain to be much cheaper than 1 DEC, but basically that is the price ceiling for grain, because you can buy it from Splinterlands for 1 DEC, so that nobody could try to inflate the price of grain higher than 1 DEC, because there's an infinite shop that sells it for 1. They say that buying it from them is meant to be like a last resource, or something that you would do if you were trying to skip ahead in the game. They do say that workers will consume grain at a rate of 0.1 grain per base production point that they provide per hour. So they didn't tie this into the level of the card. They tied it into the production of the card. So you are going to have to feed those alpha and beta cards that produce a lot faster, a lot more food. But they do go through here and they do some examples. And it does show that they would be able to feed themselves if you had them producing food. So basically you're going to have a couple plots producing food, and they'll produce, the ones that produce food should produce more than the workers that are on them. And then you'll be able to use that food that those ones are producing to pay for the workers who are working on your plots that you have, either mining SPS or getting the Secret of Praetoria research, because those are the only things that you can do in this game. You are gonna have to clear plots. So it says, before any buildings can be built on the production start, land plots need to be cleared first. Clearing the land is a construction project, and the worker can't assign any monsters to it until they have cleared the land. The only thing this doesn't apply to are keeps and castles. The one thing I'm not positive on this, I thought the building in the box, and I should have figured this out before I made the video, clears the plot for you, and you start with their building already on the plot. And I think that is true, but they do talk that basically, when you get a plot, there's going to be this much production point that have to go into it. And they give kind of an example that it would take, if you had, that first example, that team from before with 2,900 points, they would clear an epic land plot in like 71 hours. And then they would produce some. But whereas if you had the little workers working on there trying to produce that epic land plot and clear it, it would take them 17 days compared to about 3 days here, or 71 hours to clear an epic or a natural land plot. And so it's just, as you could, it would be, it's going to take time where you have to stake monsters to the land, and they're going to have to clear the land, and it's going to take them a while to do it before you can actually have them having any buildings on the land. So that's something that's kind of interesting to see, and it's actually something that's going to drive some value into the time crystals. So worker options. This is when they get into once a land plot has been cleared, players will be able to assign their workers to the plot on one of 3 different production tasks. They can perform on, with the exception of keeps or castles. We'll get more on that later. But magical and occupied land plots will have boosts for the the-secret-of-praetoria research and SPS mining tasks, because those are 2 of the tasks you can do. And the other task you can do is to basically farm. So we get into farming grain. There's a whole section here on farming grain. The grain will be produced at 0.2. So 0.02 per pp per hour. So like I said, you have to feed them 0.01. So you make one person making food will make enough to feed 2 people of equal level. But that does mean that you can't just have your common cards making food, because they wouldn't be able to feed a legendary card, right? So you're going to have some of your legendary cards making food, it looks like, and have some of your regular cards out there working on the other things. They go through some instructions here that you should understand, though. There is a tax system into the game. We'll get into that more on this book when we get to taxes. I know this is a long video, so thanks for sticking with me. We're going to go quickly through this part. You can also mine SPS. We're going to require a DAO vote to change, they're saying, but basically the SPS that's being given out for free right now for just holding land is going to become a pool that you're going to be able to mine, and the more production points that you have given into that pool, the more SPS rewards you will get. So this is going to be one of the main things people will be able to mine in the beginning. But also you can do Secret-of-Praetoria research, and assigning people to do Secret-of-Praetoria research will, let you carry over into land 2.0 when Secret-of-Praetoria becomes a lot more stuff. And like I said, every area is going to be kind of competing to be the first person to unlock this. So we'll have to see how many people are willing to put some of their workers into making Secret-of-Praetoria, as opposed to just doing the things that are kind of profitable, which is mining SPS and making grain to feed all your workers, and maybe sell to people who don't have enough. Here, where they go over the whole harvesting thing, and here's the auto harvesting that they talk about when you can claim every single plot. We're going to kind of skip over that, but the main thing is you only have to come and do a harvest once every 7 days if everything is set up well enough. And so that it's nice to see that the game will be kind of passive, where you can set it and forget it theoretically and come back to it once every 7 days. Or if you want to be somebody who's more active in it, you can claim whenever you want, as much as you want, but obviously you have to wait a little while to have your production go up. Taxes. So here's the tax section. So in phase 1.5, there's a 10% tax that's collected on all resource production, grain, SPS, and research by the local castles and keep. The taxes goes towards paying for the infrastructure and shade services provided by the castles and keeps in each region. The owners of the castles and keeps will have the opportunity to capture a portion of these taxes, and the rest will be burned. So this is a burning mechanism of everything that is made, but it's also a way for castles and keeps to just have a passive amount of income coming into them without them having to stake any cards to the castles and keeps. They are special buildings. If you get one, you're very lucky. I'm glad I'll have at least 2 keeps, but we'll see what I end up getting. They do say that in phase 2, you'll be able to do stuff within your plots and in your tracks and in your regions to lower this tax, but during the first part of this game, 1.5, it's just going to be a 10% tax. Later on in the game, though, you could do things like basically help your keep or castle owner upgrade certain things within their building, and based on how much you helped, you'll pay a lower tax. There is a whole section here on the Totem Fragments. They wanted to remind you that there are somewhere between 30,000 and 50,000 additional totems scattered across the land, and that they do expect it to take many years of the land game before every totem has been in the game. But they do talk about your average chances to find any kind of a piece of a totem, and that it can happen every single time that you harvest. You have a chance to find one, but it's an interesting thing. So we'll see how fast these end up coming out and being added into the game. Here's a whole section on time crystals and how time crystals can be used, and the name for these could be done, but it's basically it tells you about the math here. So each time token crystal will provide 10k PP points towards something, is the way it's going to work, and certain things need a certain amount of PP points to be considered complete. So like if you want to unlock a land, you would need to, for every time crystal you threw at it, you would remove 10,000 of the points that your people need to earn towards clearing that land, or you could just clear it out instantly. So this is, the speed up. There's a big section about castles and keeps in here, where it talks about, each tract of land that has a castle or a keep. Each region definitely has a castle. And then they talk about the castles and how the castles will work. So castles, the total resource production or tax rate is 10% for all. And it says to see the taxes section, which we went over. 20% of the total income of each 3 resources from the land plots within the entire region, except for keeps, is available to be earned by castle owners. This means that a castle owner has the potential to earn up to 2% of all the resources production from over 990,000 plots in the castle. Put another way, castle owners have the potential to earn resources equivalent to nearly 20 plots of production. And the way this works is the amount of tax receipts are captured by the workers in the castles, determined by the production point output of these workers in the following formula. So you have the tax receipts times 0.2 times times PP divided by PP plus 100,000. So because this has the PP plus 100,000, you can see that for production points inside the castle, it is like a never-ending, it's like a scale where you can realistically never get all the way to 20%, but as your production points go up, and if you had 2 million production points on a land, which seems absolutely unreal, on a castle, that would get you, up near 20% of the taxes. So taxes take 10%. You have a chance to get 2%, but to be honest, you're probably going to end up somewhere here, closer to around 1%, 10% of the 10%. So cut this number in half, and it's more like 10. The way that this works. Keeps work similarly, but they are a little bit better at getting they get a higher percentage, but of less things, because they only get a cut of the taxes from the 100 plots that are within their tract, not from all of them. So it does seem like keeps are better, but they're not. In the example, they basically say that it's about a keep is about 5 plots worth of production, and then half that if you only were able to get to here. But since this scale goes all the way up to 50%, you can see maybe you can end up somewhere in here. So it's a very interesting thing, but so it's going to be an interesting thing. So we have to stake very high value cards into our castles and keeps to be able to keep a lot of those taxes and have them come to us instead of them getting burned. You're going to pay the same 10% tax on anything anytime anyways, until you can maybe do things to lower that in phase 2 of the game. But how much of that 10% am I going to get to keep in my keep or castle? I don't know. And one of the things that's kind of interesting about this setup, this does kind of set up people with regions and tracks to maybe want to sell off some of their land so that they're taking a tax off of some other people who are providing monsters to the land, as opposed to owning all the land within their tract. It's a very kind of interesting and, very real world kind of taxing system. They do talk about the internal market, and basically eventually this internal market is going to be very big. But in the beginning, the only thing within the internal market of the game is going to be a liquidity pool for grain and DEC, so that you'll always be able to trade in and out of getting a DEC. They said each swap would have a 10% fee that's taken out, and people do say that a 10% fee does seem kind of high for doing a swap, but this is not your typical kind of protocol. This is all part of running the land ecosystem, and they said that they're trying to, make this real. And in the real world, if you want to run a business on a land, there are taxes, and they are not fun. And so in this game, there's taxes, and they're not going to be fun. All right, for transportation and bridging, they do say that you can basically move when you're moving the grain around in and out of the game. There is no fees for bringing it in, but there are some fees for moving it out to Hive Engine. So there are going to be some fees involved if you want to become a liquidity provider. They do talk about the prefix titles that you'll be able to earn in version 1.5 of the game. I don't think these are all the prefix titles that'll be out there, but if you own at least 5 plots, you'll get the warden. If you own a keep, you'll get a marshal. So I'll get a warden, I'll get a marshal. I have 5 Runis. I'd have to put all 5 into the game, so I might need one more if I still want to be able to play with a Runi, but then you can get the Rune Guard title. If you are a castle owner, if I get super lucky and I get a castle owner, then I can get the Sentinel, but that would only be if one of my 2 tracks happens to be lucky enough to have a castle. If you are one of the 5 players with the most research points earned in each territory behind the first, you get the Magister. You get the Overseer if you're the player with the most research points earned in each territory. And the Von Mark is the player with the most research points earned total throughout the land of Praetoria. So it'll be interesting to see, are people going to want these titles bad enough to go for the research points, when the research points are the only thing that, at least for now, do not immediately give you something that you can earn money from, either mining SPS or making grain. Okay, so card staked and DEC rentals. This basically says it will not be live when 1.5 launches, but it is something that they want to get into the game, and they do explain how this would work. But since it's not going to be in it, we're just going to skip over it. This has already been pretty long. Right here, did I hit back? I think I went backwards. Oops. Oh wait, that's it. That's the end.